Hey guys, it's Marina with Artworthy Life, where I teach Christ-centered art journaling that gets you into God's Word every day. Happy Friday, everybody, and welcome to another journal page, start to finish demo. And today we're going to be continuing with our sunflower theme for this month. I'm really enjoying this one. It's really bright and happy. It still feels like summer, but it's sort of helping us transition to fall, as I reluctantly admit that fall is coming. But I'm still enjoying the warm weather. We're having some kind of overcast weather nowadays, but that's not cold yet, so I'm happy. It's been really good. All right, and I want to make sure that you guys can all hear me clearly. So as you jump on, tell me if you can see everything clearly and hear me. There isn't any weird echoes. You guys could help me out with that. Still working on the technology here. I think I will always be working on the technology, but I'm learning and I think it's getting better. So hopefully I'm doing a better job. All right, so before we get started, I want to read us a verse out of the Word of God, always trying to start us off on the right foot. And I think the Word of God is the place to start. So let me grab my Bible without knocking everything off my page. Anita says she can hear me, and Pam says thumbs up. Okay, sounds good. All right, today I want to read a verse from Ephesians. And before I read it, I just want to say, I used to always say that as a Christian, I feel like it's so much easier to answer those big questions in life. I really discovered this when I was in ethics class in college, and just a lot of those discussions that come up in the world. And I realized, if you ask the questions that all of those classes bring up, like what is the purpose of life, and what's the meaning of life, and all these things, I always felt like it's so much easier to be a Christian because number one, God tells us, and number two, the answer to almost everything is God. So like, what is love? God. What is the purpose of life? God. Where do I go when I die? Well, God tells you. So it's really amazing to be a Christian and have truth. It's really nice. So the verse for today answers the question of what is my purpose in life? One of our purposes, at least. So, hey, good morning, Leslie Ann. So glad to see you on. So this is Ephesians chapter 2, verse 10. It says, "For we are his workmanship, created in Christ Jesus unto good works, which God hath before ordained that we should walk in them." So that's basically telling us, why were we created? We were created for the glory of God, and specifically unto good works, which he already decided for us that we should walk in them. So as long as we're following the Lord, we are following his purposes, then we are fulfilled in our purpose for life. We don't have to be confused or wandering or searching. We were just watching a program yesterday about many different religions in the world and how they're all searching for something. Well, God has it. So look no further. Look no further. God has it. All right. So that was Ephesians 2 and verse 10. So I hope that was encouraging to you guys. I hope that encourages you to stay in the Word. That's the purpose of the art journaling that I do here at Artworthy Life. Good morning, Lillian. I'm so glad you're here. Glad to see you on. All right, so today we're going to be continuing, like I said, with that sunflower theme. And I actually am going to be breaking out more than just my watercolors. I want to bring out my chalk pastels. I don't have a fancy set. I just have this Alpha Colors set. Let me make sure you guys can see that. Yes. Okay, so it's not super fancy. It's actually hand-me-down, and it works just fine for me. So these are the colors I have available. Good morning, Jackie. So glad you're on. Yeah, we are going to have to work on your tech skills because you were doing such a great job, and I know you've got it. So at some point we'll have to chat and we'll get your techie stuff figured out. That was really great to get some messages from you this morning. And great job on your art journaling. I saw 4 pages that Jackie posted. If you have not seen Jackie's pages, you need to go look at them. They look amazing. She's done her Wednesday challenges. I'm so excited for her. All right, so I'm going to kind of do a combination of watercolors and chalk pastels. And we're just going to kind of do this more freehand than anything else. So if you want to follow along, go ahead and grab your chalk pastels. And what I did is I just Googled pictures of sunflowers, not any one in particular, but just so I could have something to look at while I'm sketching these out. And then we're going to combine the kind of watercolor techniques that you guys are used to seeing along with chalk pastels. And that will be kind of the look we're going for today. So what I'm going to start with is yellow, because just like we do with watercolors, we kind of want to start with the lightest color so that we don't end up with muddy colors. So I'm going to grab, this is a size 9 round, or no, size 6 round. I was reading upside down. So size 6 round. Anyway, I am not usually super particular on the sizes because you guys know they vary so much, but this is the size it looks like if you want to grab one. And a jar of clean water. And then I'm just going to go ahead and freehand some sunflowers today. I think that'll be fun. But what I want to do is leave some space for journaling later. So what I've done is I've grabbed some of my washi tape. This is actually washi tape, not masking tape, but it works as masking tape. And I don't use it near enough, even though it's absolutely gorgeous. I just don't use it hardly enough. So I'm going to use it to mask off some areas that I want to journal later so that they're not totally muddied up with painting. So I'm just going to put some there, and I'm going to use some scissors. Look at these fun scissors I have. These came from Cracker Barrel, I believe. They were a Christmas present from Mom years ago. They're really not like ideal for a ton of stuff, but they're super fun. And they kind of seem like gardening, which I thought was perfect for sunflowers today. Okay, so sometimes I'll do like a torn edge, but I'm going to do a straight edge with that and see if I got it straight. Yeah, straight enough. And then just let that flop over the edge there. And then that'll be some area for me to journal. And I can also take my, whoopsies, where's my other piece of masking tape? Let me grab this one. I'm going to take another piece of masking tape and put it on this side, and that can be another area to journal in just a little while as well. So I'm going to trim that off. So basically I'm taping off some areas so that I don't have to like write over the top of my art as much as I normally do. Then it's okay if the tape goes over onto that page. The next thing I have is my little binder clip, which is really helpful. It keeps the page nice and flat while I'm working. So I'm going to go ahead and clip that. I'll just clip it to the area where I know I'm not going to be painting. Obviously, where I have my tape, I won't need it. Okay, and then that should get me all set up and ready to start drawing. So you can start off with a pencil if you want to, and I'm just going to use this mechanical pencil, and I'm just going to sketch out kind of the shape of a flower that I might want to paint, or to sketch, I guess is the way to say that. Okay, so I'm going to do my center of my flower kind of facing up toward the sky, and it's going to be like an oval shape. And I don't really want to sketch the whole thing out. I just kind of want to get the basic ideas down. And then from this oval, I'm going to start making little leaves. So I just wanted to get that first initial shape down. I can kind of make it a little wider if I want, and erase some of the darkest lines. And I'll probably want to have another little sunflower down here. So I'm going to just kind of draw a little circle there. And those circles are going to keep the place of my sunflower. Now, sometimes people can't see without some shade, so I'm going to create some shade right there. Can you see those two? Like that. So I'm basically like drawing it out to kind of get my brain wrapped around where I want things to be. So now that that's just lightly sketched, I'm going to grab my light yellow. And this is where you want to have some kind of a towel nearby and some water, because chalk pastels are so messy. They can be so messy. I love them, but they're messy. So have and I'm trying to grab it right now, have a towel nearby where you can wipe your fingers. Something that you don't care about it getting stained, because it's going to get stained. Have that towel nearby, and then some water, and you can rinse your fingers as you go. Has anyone that is on here who maybe hasn't answered this question before, has anyone never used chalk pastels before? The reason I asked that question is because I'll go ahead and let you guys answer, and you guys can tell me, and then I will tell you what the difference is or why I specify chalk pastels. Okay, so now I'm just going to draw some petal shapes. And sunflowers are really forgiving in their shape, but mainly what I want to do is just kind of get this teardrop shape going out and away from the what do you call that? The center of the flower. I don't know how else to say that. And what I want to do is draw some petals in the front of the sunflower first, kind of the first layer, and those will be sort of spaced out. But if you'll notice, my chalk is gigantic. It's not like using a paintbrush. So I'm really not getting a ton of detail, and that's okay. I'm not going for a ton of detail at this point. Okay, so I'm just getting these little like yellowy shapes in. And then I'm going to do a few over here on this little sunflower that's sort of looking up toward the sky right there. And basically my idea right now is just to get these chalks down, and I'm going to use a dry paintbrush to blend those little leaves in. So right now I'm not using any water. I'm just putting chalk down on the page, and I'm using my brush to blend it in. Okay, so this is like basically a sunny yellow, like a normal lemony yellow. And now I'm going to grab a little bit of some other colors. I've got this orange that's, I don't know, it's like a apricot almost. And then this one is like a tan color. And I'm going to see which one I need the most right here. Whoops, I dropped some color. So, and I'm not going to worry about it because I'm going to cover it up so much. Okay, so I'm going to use this apricot color first and just see how much of it I need. Put a little bit of it on the bottom of these leaves. It's funny to see this pattern right here because it messes with your eyes. You're like, what is this blue and butterfly? So if you have trouble like blocking out colors of tape when you have your stuff taped off, you can buy tan masking tape that doesn't throw you off so much. And it's much more pleasant to create with that nearby than it is to create with these bright blue colors or something else. But I like to use up what I have, especially if it's a masking tape I'm not using or a washi tape that I'm not using. What I'm doing right now is I'm cleaning off this chalk. This chalk pastel is covered in pink and it keeps coming off onto this painting, so I don't want it, or onto this drawing. I use painting and drawing so simultaneously that you'll have to just forgive me. Okay, so Lillian says, I have used both oil and chalk pastels, but never had instruction on how to do it correctly. Okay, so Lillian, yeah, I have actually used both as well, and they are very different, as you might be able to attest to. I've taken a little bit of art classes and using those in particular, but not like a ton. So I wouldn't say I'm an expert at them. But what I will say, and the reason why I asked, is because if you get chalk pastels, if you want to get pastels and you're wanting to achieve this look, make sure they are chalk pastels, because if you get another kind of pastel, like oil pastels, they are very much like crayons. So they don't have the same effect. And I'm not really a huge fan of those. I know that there's beautiful things you can do with them. They're just not the look I'm going for. So I just wanted to specify, if you are gonna go and get yourself some chalk pastels to use, get chalk pastels, not oil pastels. Be careful of what you pick up. Okay, so what I'm doing is I'm just using my little paintbrush as almost like a blending brush. If you have ever done makeup or whatever, you can blend in your eyeshadow and stuff like that with those little brushes. And I had some friends who are actually like makeup artists, and they had a hard time connecting what we were doing on the page with anything that they'd ever done before because they hadn't really painted. So I finally explained to them it's kind of like blending in blush. So I still sort of use that analogy sometimes. Blush or eyeshadow, you really want to blend it out. So what I've done is I've just trying to test out and see how much I can do with just the brush without adding anything else. And so that's giving me just a little bit of color down here on the page. But I'm going to want to add a lot more color than that. So I'm going to start, and this is you can kind of do this by feel, just like go with what you think feels right. So I'm going to wet my brush now, and I'm going to see what I can do with these little petals. with a wet brush. Okay, so it's blending the colors a little bit more. And this is on watercolor paper, you guys, so it's going to allow me to play with this a lot more than if you were using regular journal page or something like that. Okay, so what this is allowing me to do is chalk pastels are, they are, I don't want to say they're similar to watercolors because they have a different consistency, but they do like to come alive again when you wet them. So just like watercolors, if you wet them, they will reactivate. If you put chalk pastels down on a page and you start to wet them, they will move around and they will activate and they will turn into more like a paint. So what this is doing is this is activating the ones that are already down on the page and it's turning them into a liquid paint. Not very thick, but it is allowing me to kind of make the edges look more crisp and blend in those colors more. And that's the fun thing about combining what you may already know about watercolors with something like chalk pastels. So if you can just compare it to like when you're a little kid and you get your chalks out on the, I don't know if you guys ever did this. You have to tell me if you ever did this. But if you went out in the driveway with your chalks and you drew all over the driveway, and inevitably most of us eventually got water. Eventually we went and got water, like a hose or something, and then we wet our chalks. And if you notice, when you wet your chalks, they become like a crayon. So that is basically what you're doing. You're basically making it into a paste. Mom, you're gonna have to message me somewhere else because that is distracting on the live. That's hilarious. Okay, hi Lillian. She says she didn't know you could use water with them. Okay, so yeah, so you can either put water on the page and use a paintbrush, or you can wet the chalk and actually draw it directly onto the page. Okay, so you can do that. And then what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna grab this yellow again, and I'm actually gonna dip it straight into the water and just show you that technique. So you can take water, and I've just dipped the edge of this corner, and you can paint directly with the chalk onto your page. And that will also put a lot of color down on the page like that. Okay, so this layer right here is going to be my my second layer of petals. So I'm going to add like little sunny looking pointy petals. And I'm going to add another technique, which is just painting it straight off of the chalk like this, as if it's watercolor. And this will create that second layer right there. So as you can see, you can do a lot more than just drawing with them or just wetting them. So I encourage you to get your chalk pastels out if you have them and play with them. There's so much more you can do that you may not have considered before. So I like to just paint like sort of pointy, petally shapes all the way around, and then fill in the gaps where there's a lot of white going on with even more petals like that. And you can look at a sunflower reference photo to try to get the shape of those petals. They are unique, the shape of a sunflower. So you do want to try to mimic that so it doesn't just look like any old flower. But you can add orange and brown, just like I'm doing all around, to try to give it more dimension than just one layer of color. Okay, so I'm going to get some brown now, and I'm going to start filling in the center of this flower. So I'm going to take this brown chalk. This one's kind of purpley brown, so I'm not sure if I'll like it, but I also know that chalk pastels come off a little lighter than watercolors. At least these ones do. I'm sure there's darker chalk pastels. So I'm going to use the wet and go straight onto the page like that. Oh, look at that. So that's a lot darker, and that's what I'm wanting. And I'm going to let that go all the way out to the edges where those petals are. Okay, so that's more what I'm going for right there. That darker brown. And you can just kind of use your chalk pastels. Look at what colors you've got. I'm going to add a little black because I feel like sunflowers have more of that dark blackish brown toward the center. And I'm going to use my brush and kind of push it around. All around those edges. Okay. And now that I have my brown in the center, I'm going to grab this orange again, and I'm going to use the brown that's in the center and pull it out into the petals to create more of a darker base of the petals right there. So I'm going to kind of use that and just pull up and out into the leaves. I like to use the colors that are already on the page and move them around to let the flower kind of look cohesive all the way around. So I'm using the color that's in the center of the flower right there and pulling it down into the leaves like that. Just like that, and you can see it's starting to kind of turn it into a more realistic color. So it'll have, varying shades of brown and orange and all of that all the way around. And notice as I'm going around, I'm pulling from the center outward all the way around like that, so that the petals all look like they're coming out from the center of this flower. And now I'm going to add a little bit more black to the center again, just to make sure my center looks nice and dark and I don't lose any of that. And I'm dotting this mostly so that it just kind of fills in. Okay, this little flower over here is getting neglected, so I'm going to actually use where did the yellow go? Did I move? There it is. I'm going to use this yellow and dip it in the water and just draw out some more petals. And this flower is small and I'm using chalk pastels, so I'm not going to make these petals very detailed. I'm just dipping the chalk in my water and pulling out some petals from there. It'll look just like a big, open, happy flower. Okay, and then I'm going to smooth these out. Okay. And let's see. Okay, so then tell me if you guys can see the difference in color. This one's bright yellow and this one's like an orange color. Can you guys see the difference in that? So the reason I wanted you guys to see that is because a lot of times if you buy a set of chalk pastels, you think, oh, or if you buy a set of any colors, you think, wow, okay, so I've got to get exactly the colors I want. Otherwise I'll be stuck using this weird orange and this weird brown and whatever. And while it is important for you to get like a set of colors that you do like, it's much more beneficial to you to actually just learn to blend colors. So you'll notice I'm using an orange that's way different than what I'm really ending up with. I'm ending up with like a soft kind of fall colored orange. But the orange I'm starting with is very sweet looking and kind of summery. So you can mute your colors by adding browns and grays and things like that. And all of that is a really good skill to have because you may be limited or you may want to use a different color than you have currently in your palette. And it's good to be able to know how to do that. So go with the challenge, use what you have. I'm going to use this brown again. Again, this brown isn't exactly what I want either, which is why I'm adding black. And I'm just going to put that brown straight in the middle of that page. I'm going to add a little water to it, like that. And then I'm going to actually add a little bit more black while it's wet like that. Yeah, so I'm just kind of rubbing that in, and then I'm going to use my brush and push that color to the outer edges of that flower right there. And this flower's center looks a little darker than the other one, so I'm going to lift a little bit of that color off by using a clean wet brush and just lifting and then wiping it on my cloth on the right hand side. So clean wet brush, and then I'm going to dab all the way around. Okay, and same as we did before, I'm going to pull some of that brown into these petals. That's going to help me create the shape of the petals as I go around like this. Let's see how many people are watching. So we have a couple of people on. Are you guys in an area where sunflowers grow very well, or do you have other flowers that are blooming right now? Because we have a couple of friends who planted flowers, sunflowers, and they might have planted them too late, but they're not quite blooming yet. But I know a lot of people around here have sunflowers that are blooming like crazy all over the place. So look how that brown, I don't know if you guys can see that very well, but look how that brown is allowing me to create the shape of those leaves without, or of those petals, without losing the color of the yellow of the petals. And I am only using one size brush right now, but because it's a round brush, I've explained this before, I can get the tip nice and thin right there. So that's what's allowing me to do that detail right there. Okay, so these are kind of sort of free looking flowers. They're not very perfect, and I'm letting their colors just sort of blend into the background like that. But that's the look I'm going for this painting. Okay, and next we're going to go ahead and do some vines and sort of background, but I'm not going to make these super detailed. So basically what I'm wanting to do is fill the background with color so that this is so that you're able to see that this is white. But this is not going to be specifically like crisp, detailed painting. So let me put the colors back that I currently have, and I'm going to grab a different green. This is a dark, oh, this one's almost teal colored. And again, I need to wipe these off. So if your chalks are dirty, wipe off the colors that are currently on them. Yes, Pam, I can make the picture bigger. It doesn't actually make the picture bigger, but it does make there be more picture. Okay, let me switch this really fast. There you go. Okay, so, oh, let me do that. That might help. All right. How's that, Pam? Let me know if that helps. Okay, and Lillian says we've had sunflowers here for some years. Oh, nice. Okay, good. And they grow pretty well. We have volunteer sunflowers in the backyard. We didn't plant them, but they somehow arrived. And we think, oh, wow, they must have, come from the seed that we leave out for the birds. That's what we're thinking. Okay, I'm just going to do some leaves coming off of these little sunflowers. And I'm going to paint them, or I'm going to put them on with the chalk and then blend them in with the paintbrush. But these are going to be, like I said, not very crisp looking leaves. Because I'm using chalk, number one, the chalk looks better if you're not trying to make it super detailed. Number two, it's hard to do detail with chalk. And you can accomplish it with the brush, but I would rather use an art medium for the purpose it was intended. And some people maybe do some detail with chalk, but I think for the most part, it's better to kind of let it be not super precise. Okay, so I'm just putting in some of those. And before I do anything else, I'm going to add some tan into it right there because I don't want that green to be really harsh. So what's fun about chalk pastels is almost like putting the color down before you ever even start painting, like deciding, okay, what color am I going to want to be in there before you ever start going with it. Okay, and now I'm going to take my brush while it's dry and kind of blend these colors together and get them going the directions I want them. My brush is a little bit wet, but for the most part it's dry. So I'm going to get these colors going the directions I want them before I wet my brush, especially around these petals. I'm just going to blend those together. And then look, I can create that nice leaf shape and let that brown kind of smudge. And I'm going to do some little wispies out to the side of this petal as well, because I know I'm going to want some other leaves sort of appearing in the background over there. So again, with these, I'm going to use my paintbrush and just kind of blend this all in. And now I'm going to start adding some water. This one needs a little help getting those colors to blend. Okay. All right, and then I'm going to do some more of those little wispy background leaves and then add some water to these. Oh, Lillian says all of hers were volunteers too. That's so wild. So I wonder if it's just common in this area to get a lot of volunteer sunflowers. I mean, you aren't in our area, but you're in Oregon. So yeah, we haven't really grown sunflowers ever before. And then we came here and there they were, little volunteers. So that's kind of cool. All right, so I'm going to keep adding little like extra little leaves here and there. Just using the brush strokes to kind of dry off my brush at the end. So basically I'm painting in a little leaf like this, getting the shape down like that, and then whatever's left over on my brush, I'm making a couple of other little leaf shapes, and that's just filling in around those flowers really nicely. Okay, I'm going to add some more water over here. Fill in these. And you can leave some white space on your leaves if you want to. I'm filling mine in most of the way. And then just be careful not to totally lose your leaves, your petals, the flower petals as you're coming around. Make sure you're watching out for the edges of those. And then I'm just gonna use whatever's left on my brush and fill in the background there. Okay, so now that I have the basic leaf shapes that I wanted to be more crisp, now I'm gonna fill in everywhere the background of this painting. So I want my fingers to be nice and clean because I'm about to use them as my primary art tool. This is just fun for me. I like to do this part. So I'm gonna use a bunch of different colors and basically just fill in the background as if we've got some greenery going on that's really not pronounced. So I'm gonna take this green and just sketch it along the edges of these flowers. And I'm not gonna use a lot because this green is really dark. And I'm gonna take my finger and just blend that in like this. Blend that all around. Blend that in, even going across the leaves. You can kind of go into that background area. I'm going to take my dry brush and fill in between the flowers because that's a little bit tight to use my finger for. I'm going to go in like this, and like this, and like this. So you can kind of use your brush where you think your fingers are too chubby to go in there like that. And then you can kind of come in on this side of the flower like that. And then I can fill in with my brush. Now this is just basically using my brush as if it was a big finger. Okay, and now I'm going to go ahead and use a little bit of water to blend in this green over here. And I'm gonna do some more swirly bits around here and then blend that in. Now, one thing I have learned with this particular set of watercolors is that I can use this light tan. This is also a dirty piece of chalk, but it's actually like almost like a skin tone. I can use this one and a couple of the other lighter colors to get the darker colors to blend better. So I'm going to add a little bit of that, and you'll see it kind of picks up the green and helps it move across the page a little better. So I'm going to use this green again. This is great for creating that, almost like when you take a photo and you want the background all blurry. That's kind of the effect that you're going for. I'm using swirly because I don't want any defined shapes, really. I don't want brush strokes or streaks or anything like that. I'm just going to blend all that in. Like that. And I'm going to add some of this tan down here and over here as well. And just let these colors get combined. Now notice I haven't used watercolors at all, but look at the effect it's creating is very similar. Right, so I'm going to use the whole piece of chalk now that we're in a bigger space, and do that swirly shape. I do a little bit at a time because I like to blend as I go and not let it get too fixed in its place before I start blending. Oops. And just keep blending it all the way across the page like that, all the way at the top. And then I can come over here. I would normally put a piece of tape here. In fact, I'll go ahead and do that because I don't want to bump it. And that will protect the other page from getting too much chalk on it for when I do my journal page tomorrow. All right, I'm probably, oh yeah, Lillian says it almost looks marbled, really pretty. Thank you. Yeah, so that's kind of the idea. And you're just giving it a nice soft background. Now my tape's starting to come up a little, but that's okay. It'll still look okay. Yeah, so you can add as much color or as little color as you want, but I want to get this initial color down, and then, so that's the initial color layer, and then I can kind of come back and anywhere I think needs a little bit more happening. So I can take this brown and put it along the edge here. That can create like a framed in edge almost, especially along the corners and the very edge like that. I use my fingers mostly. There are blending tools you can use, but I like to use my fingers because the oils work really well and your fingers don't leave any kind of streaks. It's just, God created the best tools when he created your fingers. So that's what I like to use. You just have to be careful that you don't fingerprint things that you don't want fingerprinted. So just make sure you have your other hand clean or whatever you need to do. Okay, I'm just going to go all the way around with this brown. And again, if the brown isn't blending, I can add this lighter tan and it like picks up that darker brown and helps it blend in better so I don't end up with chalk lines, like straight harsh lines on my work like that. And then I'm also going to do it along this edge. So I'm framing in this whole thing, giving it a nice border. I'm using my finger to blend that whole thing in. Really frames in the painting. See, I say painting. Painting, drawing, whatever. It really frames it in very well. Use this brown a little bit. And you can just kind of look at how much you've got and see if it needs more or less than mine. Just kind of look at what you're working with. I'm going to use my paintbrush again and some of these chalk pastels and just kind of touch up my flowers because they've had a lot of chalk going over them while I'm doing this technique. I want to make sure their little petals and things are nice and crisp. So I'm going to come back, get my chalk pastels a little bit wet, and just kind of crisp up the flowers themselves a little bit, but not too much because I really like that sort of mottled, imperfect looking background. Okay, yeah, so that's kind of what I'm going for. I wanted the center of the flowers especially to really stand out. Okay, so now I'm going to take off the tape. I need to rinse my fingers. Make sure you rinse your fingers and clean them really well, because if you don't, you'll end up with smudgy, smudgy everything all over your page, which is no fun. All right, so now we're going to take off this tape. Let me clean off the right side of that page. Okay, take off this tape first. And that, see how that kept that side of the page really nice? We're going to take this off. That left me a nice area to put in a scripture verse. And here's a great place I can do some journaling. There we go. How nice. I love that. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and grab my, this is my Tombow hard tip Fudenosuke pen. And I'm going to put in a verse right here. Let's see. I'll go ahead and put in the number of this verse, which is going to be Ephesians. Oh, and I should say, this is the part of the show where Marina stops talking, because if Marina talks while she writes, she misspells words on live. So bear with me, I'm going to be writing. So Ephesians, this is our verse for today. Hopefully I spelled that right. I think I did. 2:10. All right. And then I'm going to also take my, whoops, where's my fine tip? There it is. I'm going to take my fine tip watercolor brush, and I'm going to use my Komorebi paints over here. I have a dark brown right here, and I'm going to add a little bit of detail to the edge of these little journaling areas. And take some of this brown. This brown is number 52. I'm going to mix it with a little bit of the black. And I have a super, super small brush. It's called a liner brush. And it says here it's 10/0. But basically it's just super, super small. The reason I'm using this instead of a pen is because pen doesn't write on watercolor very well. I mean, not watercolor, I'm sorry. Pen doesn't write on chalk very well. And what I want to do is add a little border to the outside of this. So I'm going to do like these little stitches across the page. If I can get my color dark enough. I want it to show up pretty dark. So I'm just going to do little stitches all along the edge of this. And that'll make these little journal areas look a little bit more finished and framed in. I love to frame in areas where there's going to be words. If you find that your journals are not looking finished, or they're not looking very clean or something, or they're just not looking very balanced, you can try adding little frames to wherever you're journaling. And that when you frame in your words, it makes them look like they were supposed to be there instead of like they're intruding on your art. And notice what I did just here. I put the stitches on the outside of the white, and now I'm putting them on the inside of the white. And now I'm going to go back to the outside of the white. That's kind of a fun way to mix up your border like that. I'm going to put some stitches all the way across the top like this. And this is a little tedious. Maybe I wouldn't normally do this, probably normally want to use a pen, but pen on chalk does not work super well. Okay, same thing. I'm going to go this way with some black. You guys like this border on here? Can you think of some other ways to do borders on your journals? I know some of you ladies who have been journaling are great at thinking of borders. So again, here I'm coming across the white, and on this edge I didn't go across the white. I went across the color on the background. Okay. I'm keeping my brush nice and wet so it's easy to do these little dashes because they are pretty small. Okay, and another reason I wanted to do that was so that I could pull in some darker color into this painting down here without it seeming odd that I had used some darker color. So just a tip, if you're going to add any detail to a painting, a lot of times it's good to think about ahead of time if you really want to do that, because in order to make the painting look balanced, you'll want to be adding some of that detail on all the painting. So I knew I'd want to add a little bit more to these sunflowers to make them look a little bit more finished. And I wanted to use this darker brownish black to do that. So to make that look more cohesive with this painting, I went ahead and did that stitched border so that when I came down here and did this kind of dark detail, it wouldn't look odd. Okay, I'm gonna have to turn my painting. I always talk about turning your painting, make your hand comfortable. If your hand is comfortable, your painting will turn out much better because the brush strokes will look much more easy and relaxed. So this is helping me frame out my flower so that it looks more finished. And especially each of these little petals, it's really helping with that. Okay, I'm going all the way around like that. And this is using watercolor on top of chalk pastels, and you can see why I like to use these in combination because they really complement each other. They don't clash. They have a similar effect. So as you're combining the two, just have fun experimenting with how much you can transition between the two and not really see the difference. They're kind of the same. They have the same overall effect. They're soft. They can be manipulated with water. Just a really fun combination. Okay, I'm going to add a little bit more black into sunflower itself right there. And then this one down here, I'm going to do the same thing using the same tiny little brush. And then just kind of frame out each of those little petals. And I'm going a little faster on this one because it doesn't have to be as detailed. It's kind of small. But still being careful not to create too big of brush strokes. That's one thing I don't want to do. I want my brush strokes to stay nice and small, which is why I grabbed the smallest brush I could possibly find. And then I am still keeping my paint rather wet so that I can do those nice thin brush strokes all the way around. You can see that's kind of helping to make the sunflower look a little bit more real, like that. There's a little bit here I want to fix. All right. And we're getting to just about the point where I say I quit while I'm ahead so that I don't mess up my painting. But I do want to smooth out some of these colors a little bit. I think I want the yellow to make sure it's still showing up nice and bright. So I'm going to put some yellow right here. Make sure that's nice and bright there. And that looks pretty good to me. Alrighty, so that's all I have for today. And I'm going to go ahead and do my journaling up here and add the date for today. But as far as the painting itself, that's where we're going to leave it. So thank you guys for joining me. I hope you all enjoyed this demo. If you did, feel free to share it with anyone else that you think might enjoy it. And I'd love to see you on here again. And if you want to go one step further and join us for our event at the end of the month, we're having a 3-day Get Started Art Journaling workshop, and I'd love to see you there. So if you have any questions about that, send me a message or leave a comment here, and I will answer you and send you that link. And in the meantime, God bless you guys. Have a great weekend, and I will see you next week. Take care. Bye.